Praise the OMNISSIAH, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for a new direction in our Warhammer Summer. The Adeptus Mechanicus calls us. We are going to be playing Mechanicus. This was, again, recommended by the audience as it's a must-play. They indicated it was XCOM style, which I'm down with. Absolutely adored our XCOM 2 playthrough and was very much looking forward to this. And this was kind of my free choice after Space Marine, which we covered recently. And then, of course, it's Dawn of War 1. That was like the first two important ones. The next one's like you can go wherever you want to go there. We will be looking probably back to Dawn of War 1 and its expansions, but let's keep breaking it up and keep this interest in, especially as we're playing so many different genres of game. Warhammer really obviously lends itself to a multitude of styles of game. It's not like Command and Conquer, right? That's the RTS, and if it wasn't RTS, we'd be kind of mad, or it might not work out, and we get Renegade, which kind of never went anywhere, you know, things like that. Warhammer, you can kind of do whatever the hell you want with it, and they did do whatever the hell we want with it, for good and bad. I will say, for those of you who missed the choosing selection of what would be on Warhammer Summer, there was a lot of games that fell into the do not play this, oh my god, stay the hell away from this game category, which we might play at some point just to find out how bad it can be, because I'm kind of being spoiled right now with all these S-tier games. Well, let's talk about Mechanicus. What is Mechanicus? It's a mix of Darkest Dungeon and an XCOM-style game. But one thing that grabbed me immediately about this, which I think is going to actually be the highlight of this game, is nothing to do with the gameplay. It is the interactions by the different members of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Until I played this, I kind of had an image in my head. I'd watched a lot of lore videos and things like that about Warhammer. Is that my gut feeling was the Mechanicus, who have embraced the machine god, they worship it, but it is a religion. But generally, because of the nature of machines and the binary code, the zeros and the ones, is that they would kind of be on a very similar mindset, right? It's a yes or a no kind of logic gate that they move through, and that's really not the case. And this was a very eye-opening experience as to just how much differing opinions and conflict and drama exists amongst the Adeptus Mechanicus, which leans far more into religious interpretation than I ever gave it credit for, considering, you know, the machine-like nature of them, as they are ditching the weak flesh in favor of the mechanical. And so there's too many characters here for me to remember all their names. Let me put it that way. Like, my favorite so far is Videx. Videx is like straight up pure religion of the OMNISSIAH and worships the scrolls and is constantly quoting from the scrolls of the nature of what they should be doing. And any interference with that, anything to do with the Xenos, anything to do with anything could be considered heretical, must be burned and purged, because learning about those people is learning sin, is essentially how he puts it. Is like anything that they are trying to teach us, or any knowledge that is outside of what we're after, is just wrong, it's bad, and we don't want it. However, there are other members of the Adeptus Mechanicus, like, we need to study and learn. We increase our knowledge. We learn how to beat them better. We learn how to defeat them. We learn how to fight them. We learn where they come from. And the Videx is like, no, we don't need to know any of that, because all we need to do is purge them with holy fire. And the other guy's like, wait a minute, this is what's going on. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I realize that what is Mechanicus and what is going on here? The basic premise of the story is that a message is received from one of their tech priests who is out looking for information. That is the general overarching goal of the Adeptus Mechanicus, is to seek out old knowledge about machines and blueprints and things like that that have existed tens of thousands of years ago, which they still use today, you know, the mechanics for Titans and things like that, all the way down to how do we build a microwave. And to go and find this knowledge, to archaeologically dig it up somewhere within the galaxy and find it. One of their tech priests is out there and sends a message saying, I found something. I'm detecting something down here, but I think it's gone badly. I think it's gone badly, and dead. Okay, so the Adeptus Mechanicus is like, that was one of our good tech priests. We need to get out there. And they send the ship to go and find out what's going on. And generally what we've found on this planet is that this former tech priest entered a tomb. It turns out it's a Necron world. And the Necrons is a really interesting story that develops from the War in Heaven. I have watched the video on what the War in Heaven is. These old gods that existed, and they were tricked essentially into giving up all their souls, and the Necrons became basically mindless automatons. And they were then sealed away. They were put into stasis, whatever you want to call it, for millennia. And then now we've entered this tomb where they're stored, and they're waking up. And they're waking up at an accelerated rate. And the problem with that is, at some point, they're going to overtake our ability to manage this, and they're just going to swarm out, and we've just unleashed Necrons upon, more and more Necrons upon the galaxy. And that's a really bad idea. It's a bad idea. But what it does do in gameplay is it gives you a time limit. As you have this bar, this progress bar that is filling up, the more you interact with the gameplay world, the more this bar fills up. Very similar to XCOM, where you have a certain amount of days to quell the enemy threat. So they've borrowed from that. But then they've mixed it up a little bit. And what you have in the gameplay section is this sort of setup for the final fight. So far, and whether this will change or not, I don't know, is that each dungeon run you do only has one fight in it. And your journey to that fight dictates how difficult that fight is going to be. You can either explore a bunch of rooms where you're given a bunch of prompts of what you should do in that room. So you might discover an old servitor. It's not working. And then you'll have input from the various leaders of the Mechanicus who kind of indicate what you should do with this. You'll have Videx saying, just destroy it. Or use it for propaganda. Broadcast propaganda throughout it. Maybe you investigate it. Maybe you try and reclaim it, right? Maybe you do. So you usually get 3 options here. And whichever one you do will either give you resources, but it will also make the Necrons more aware of your presence, or it will go badly, and then that will really heighten the Necron threat. And the Necrons have this levels, the dungeon has this level system in the top left that keeps going up the more you do. So traveling between the rooms will raise the Necron level, interacting in the rooms will raise the Necron level, etc., etc. And then ultimately you're building to what the final fight will be. And each stage of this level up process will be like, hey, the Necrons have detected you. Stage 2 will usually be, oh, there's going to be more Necron warriors in the fight. And then it'll be like, oh, the Necrons regenerate faster. So all these additions and affixes are added to the final fight. And then you get in there with all these extra things and they'll happen. But you can work around them, which I found really interesting. For example, when you kill a Necron, they don't die. You have to double tap them, which means it needs another turn in order to do that. Because you've used your turn to kill it. So you'll need another turn to actually like kill it. And if they regenerate faster, but you kill them both at the, let's say there's 2 in the starting room, but you have an affix which will add more Necrons, they will join the fight later. So if you kill them like in the first turn and they're both disabled, the fight wins and you bypass that encounter entirely or not. So you can set up this strategy starting to form, which is great because they don't have all the XCOM strategy. The chance to miss doesn't appear to exist. If you attack, you will hit as long as you can do it. Critical strikes do exist, so it's more about setup. And I think, even though I'm in early game yet, things like armor and energy protection will become much more relevant as the game goes on. So it's something I'm keeping an eye out, because right now they have like 1 energy protection, 1 armor protection, which is kind of a nothing thing. Any weapon will essentially work, but I'm sure as the game goes on, that will become more difficult, and something you need to be more aware of when building your tech priests, which is what you do. You have tech priests. Those are your main characters, your hero units, we'll call them. But they've also done another mechanic, which is you can bring troops. And after each turn, you can bring a troop onto the battlefield. And these are much weaker units, so they're like servitors. And I've just unlocked some alpha, higher level ones, but they cost resource to bring. So servitors are free to bring along the mission. You can stack out your team with servitors. Or you can bring some stronger troops that are going to cost resource. So it's called Blackstone in this, but, currency, which is used to upgrade people and things like that. So you don't really want to waste that. Certainly early game, you want to be upgrading your tech priests as much as possible. But at this point, you might want to consider bringing them if it's going to be a tougher mission, which I don't know what it is yet, right? The missions just say easy, I haven't had any mediums, hards, or extremes, or whatever's going to be coming later down the line yet. So far, I've just been able to get away with bringing servitors who do their thing, which is great. The other change to the mechanics, which I found really interesting, is the idea of cognition points. So I'm calling them coggers from now on. Your abilities on your hero units cost coggers. And you can, so far, I can only have a maximum of 4 coggers. I think it's 4 or 5. And the way you get these is variable. So you can pick them up before you actually reach the last room. Like if you do well in the choice section of the dungeon, you can acquire coggers. And that means you start the fight with some coggers in hand so you can use your abilities much earlier. In the fights itself, you get them from like killing a unit. You'll gain a cogger. More importantly, there are like structures within the map in the final battle where if you stand next to them, you will draw the coggers, or you can send a little servitor helmet, little skull head out as a maneuver to go and pick them up for you at range. However, that's on a 2-turn cooldown, so you can send them off to pick up these coggers for you. It doesn't cost you anything. But that's also the unit that's determined to scan the enemy units as well to find out if they're tough or strong and things like that. That's an interesting balance, and I'm wondering how it's going to play out. My initial thoughts on the gameplay. I'm a little concerned, not that it's a problem right now, that the choice section of the dungeon before you get to the battle is going to become a little cumbersome. Little concerned about that, because there's a lot of dialogue per room, which right now I'm kind of enjoying, but it does kind of fall down to the same sort of structure. Do you embrace the OMNISSIAH completely, in which case you burn this out, or do you reclaim it, or who do you kind of side with at the point? Because all the tech priests, the Mechanicus, will make their case as to what you should do in that room, which is a lot of dialogue for what is a quick choice. And I kind of feel at some points I'm going to just be like, I get it, I'm going to skip it. I'm going to, like, not listen to all the dialogue, just so, because, you know, it's like maybe 5 or 6 lines per room, or 5 or 6 dialogue choices, and then just go with whatever role-play style I'm going with. I either worship the OMNISSIAH completely and stick to the rule of law, or I go the other way. Right now, I'm being a little flexible, so we'll see how it goes. And so that means there's only one real, like, fight element per dungeon. And I like the fighting stuff a lot more than the choice system, if you know what I mean, because it feels quite cumbersome. It's very loaded. It feels right now it's very, very loaded with dialogue and map exploration rather than actually playing the game. So I'm wondering how that's going to pace out over the course of the journey. It's not a, I want to be clear, it's not a problem right now. I can foresee it being a problem in like 6 hours time, and I'll be like, ugh. It's a lot of talking that's not advancing anything. I get it. Videx wants us to... You know what I mean? I get the impression. Videx wants us to do this. You want us to do this. I get it. I get what we want to do here. Am I going to greed that out as a more gamey... I'm me. I want more resource. I know this gives me more currency, so I'm just going to take more currency. Or do I stick with more of a roleplay choice, even though it might end badly? But it's kind of funny. I'm not sure where that's going to go. It'll probably change... I think that the decider of this will actually be when the fights get more difficult. And it's like, it's really, there's a real choice here that I have to make as to whether I explore every room, which is what I'm doing right now, but I'm making the fight too hard at the end. Like, I haven't died yet. So that's probably going to be a thing at some point, is I will die. And it'll be like, okay, I can't juice these maps up, to use a PoE vernacular, as much as I like, in which case the dialogue stuff will naturally taper off in favor of, like, making a doable fight. So we'll see how that plays out. That's just my brain whirring, like I always do, and why I analyze games so much is like, where does this lead us in... It's great now. Where does it lead us in 6 months, right? Or, you know, in an MMO sites like Scenarios and Miss Pandaria. These are really fun the first time, but there's a lot of role play and stuff where it's downtime. If I'm repeating this, say, 5 times a week, that's going to get tiresome in a couple of weeks' time, right? Do you get what I'm saying? I hope so. Good. I don't know why I'm asking you, like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, you're going to go, yeah, Mike, I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. One thing I'm really loving, though, is the upgrade process. Fully outfitting the tech priests and having them all, you know, visually apply, so they've all got tentacles with guns on them. So far, I've got 2 tech priests. I know my next mission will get me another one. I have Zoe. Zoe has become my ranged, how would I describe this unit as it's filling out a role for me? Kind of like a hunter, I would guess. So very ranged focus, using ranged weapons, but also kind of the explorer, scanning things in the battle, like keeping towards the back, right? This rear support of being able to shoot in and support our main unit with his Bals. Bals is my Orc Smork Smasher. Full melee, full in there. I have upgraded. Every upgrade has been like increased DPS, give +1 damage, things like that. Massive axe that causes this. I've given, we have these extra bonuses you can add called, I keep calling them tentacles, canicles, or whatever they're called, which like +3 weapon damage on your next attack and things like that. So I've had been smorking things, which has been really fun to just have this like front brute. It just goes up, crushes things, and also gets really close. So if the enemy only has guns, they have to move away from me in order to fire guns, because you can't do them in melee range, forcing double DPS because they have opportunity strikes like you'd see in Baldur's Gate and things like that. So exactly the way I want to play. So I've got these 2 tech priests right now. Third one, not sure what I'm going to do. Maybe a healer, but probably more of a support role. There's a lot of buffs and things. There's a lot more of the game for me to explore and flesh out, which we'll do over the coming videos here on YouTube, to see where this develops and where it goes. My key moment so far has been the boss fight that I did, which I could tell, I could gauge from the live audience, I should have absolutely lost. Spoilers, I didn't. I won. It was a fight that the large General Necron had awoken, and you could go and investigate to get more resources, or you could just flee and leave it alone and not deal with it, because you clearly are not supposed to win this fight. I know you can. It's one of those things that, like, yeah, if you know the game inside out, you can absolutely win this fight, but obviously at the stage I'm at on the first playthrough, no, you're not really supposed to win this fight. It's very much like Dark Souls. Yeah, your first fight in Dark Souls, Elden Ring, whatever, Bloodborne, whatever it's supposed to be, you're supposed to lose. That's the nature of it. It's teaching you the respawn system. Either way, I got in there, and the mission was to survive 6 rounds, I think? 4 to 6 rounds. Just survive, because this guy, if he gets to you, is just going to murder you. This was really fun. Like, it taught you a lot about the game, like how to manipulate things, because like servitors, when you bring the troops in, you can position them, as long as it's within a radius of a unit, you can position them in a certain place. So far, every enemy unit has been forced to attack the closest unit to it, which means positioning a servitor between you and an enemy means the enemy will attack the servitor before it attacks you. I'm sure that's going to change, but right now that's how it works. And I had this, like, pathway through the map where I had to kill the other Necron warriors to make a space to hide and line of sight, and all these elements started to play in as this giant boss chased me while I was, like, mind-dropping servitors to protect my main guys from getting hit. And it worked out. I don't think I got a great reward for doing it. I can't remember right now, but I did survive, which was great, because it was really a really interesting approach that I didn't have during any XCOM playthrough. It's like, you can't win. You're just going to have to outplay what's going on here and use pathing and things like that to get around it. So, needless to say, my first impressions of this, very, very good. The highlight has absolutely been learning about the Adeptus Mechanicus and their diversity, including caring about their troops, and their ability to turn off emotions in relative moments has been really eye-opening as to how the Mechanicus functions. Because we do have a lot of very, very clever and seasoned lore masters of Warhammer watching along, and I'm asking questions like, okay, how does this kind of sit? And they're like, yeah, this is totally how these guys are. Think of it more of a religion than the binary 1 and 0 code. It's just that they embrace the machine god. I'm like, right, got it. So where this journey takes us and what we'll uncover along the way, because I do think storytelling, similar to RTS like we had with Dawn of War, storytelling can be done very, very well through this medium, because you're telling your own story through gameplay, the loss of tech priests, naming them and all that. You feel some sort of connection to your units, but at the same time, in between, the overarching story of how the Mechanicus works and how the Necrons work, which were not featured at all in Dawn of War or Space Marine. I mean, they mention tech priests in Space Marine, but you don't see them really. Is better. Like, we're exploring these other areas. It's been nothing but Space Marine versus Orcs, a little bit of Eldar in Dawn of War, but not a huge amount, and Chaos running wild. This, I think, is just going to be Adeptus and Necrons for the most part, but we'll see where it goes. So stay tuned for updates as we continue through Mechanicus. See you again, guys. Bye-bye.